air itself was thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and wild, untamed hope. I stood at the very edge of the glowing ceremonial grounds, my heart a frantic trapped bird beating against my ribs. This night, the mating ceremony, was the axis upon which my entire world turned. At 26, I was a ghost in the machine of my own pack, a low-level omega whose name was only spoken with a sigh of pity or a curl of a lip. But tonight, under the swollen silver eye of the moon, I dared to let a fragile, desperate hope bloom in my chest. Maybe this time, maybe fate will finally see me. My gown was a tapestry of my shame, a faded, patched thing handed down from an aunt whose memory was as faint as the fabric's original color. It hung on my frame, a constant, whispering reminder of my poverty, my orphaned status, my nothingness. As I took a hesitant step forward, the dewy grass cold beneath my bare feet, I caught the flicker of glances from the other young females. Their whispers were like the hiss of serpents, sharp and venomous. They didn't need to speak loudly. Their eyes, sharp with disdain as they raked over my worn dress and my lonely stance, said everything. Orphan. Poor. Unwanted. I kept my head down, but I felt every stare like a physical blow. Around me, the alphas and betas moved with a born certainty, their futures already written in the strength of their bloodlines and the power of their wolves. I watched them, my soul aching with a longing so deep it felt like a physical hollow in my chest. The elders had spoken of destiny, of bonds forged under the silver moon that were unbreakable and divine. For them, it was a promise. For someone like me, it felt like a beautiful, cruel joke I was never meant to be part of. Then the drums began. The sound was ancient, a primal rhythm that vibrated up from the earth, through the soles of my feet, and into the very core of my being. It was the sound of beginnings, of fates being sealed. My breath hitched, a ragged little sound lost in the powerful beat. This was it. The ceremony was commencing. I took another step forward, my feet leaden with a lifetime of hesitation, but as the moon climbed higher, painting the world in shades of silver and obsidian, a different pull tugged at my senses, a whisper on the wind that had nothing to do with the drums or the gathering crowd. It was a feeling, a cold, sharp prickle of awareness that slid down my spine. Deep inside, the quiet, usually ignored voice of my wolf stirred. Not this way, it seemed to whisper. Your path lies elsewhere. The hope in my chest sputtered, a candle in the wind. And as I stood there, torn between the desperate dream of a mate and the strange, insistent call from the dark woods bordering our territory, I felt the first true stirrings of the unexpected. The night, I realized with a jolt of fear and something else. Something like destiny was far from over. The pull was a physical thing, a hook in my soul, reeling me away from the light, the music, the dream. Each step I took into the oppressive darkness of the ancient woods felt like a betrayal of my own heart, but my feet would not obey my mind's desperate pleas to turn back. The primal beat of the mating drums faded, replaced by the frantic rhythm of my own pulse thundering in my ears. The celebratory scents of honeyed wine and roasting meat were swallowed by the damp, earthy perfume of decay and pine. And then I found him. A crumpled form beneath the gnarled roots of an oak tree, so still he seemed a part of the shadows themselves. An old man, his clothes torn and muddy, his face pale as death. The metallic tang of blood hit my senses a second before my eyes found the deep, ugly gash on his arm, still seeping crimson onto the forest floor. A whimper escaped my lips. I dropped to my knees, the damp earth soaking through my thin gown. "You're hurt," I whispered, my voice trembling as I reached out a hesitant hand. His eyes, clouded with pain, fluttered open. "Go. Back," he rasped, each word a struggle. "The ceremony. You shouldn't. For me." His selflessness, even in his agony, shattered the last of my hesitation. "I'm not leaving you," I said, the words firmer now, laced with a resolve I didn't know I possessed. I tried to lift him, to get him to shelter, but he was a dead weight, and my Omega's strength was no match for his solid frame. My arms shook, muscles screaming in protest. Defeated, all I could do was carefully prop him against the rough bark of the tree, trying to make him as comfortable as possible. The wind whispered through the canopy above, carrying with it a distant, ghostly echo of laughter from the ceremony. The sound was a knife twisting in my gut. My chance was slipping away with every passing second, the bonds being formed without me. Tears of frustration and fear welled in my eyes, but I blinked them back fiercely. I wrapped my threadbare shawl around his shivering shoulders, trying to lend him my meager warmth. The night grew colder, and with it, my fear deepened. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent my heart into a wild gallop. Were there predators out here? Or worse, rogues? I was defenseless. I was alone. I curled my fingers into the cool soil, grounding myself, and held on. I would not leave him. This, I realized with a terrifying clarity, was a different kind of test. And I had already chosen my answer. The crack of a branch behind me was as sharp as a gunshot in the silent woods. I spun around, my breath catching in my throat, a scream trapped behind my teeth. And then I saw him, a wolf. Massive, with a coat the color of shadow and moonlight, and eyes that glowed like molten amber. He emerged from the darkness, not with a predator's stalk, but with a silent, powerful grace that stole the air from my lungs. This was no ordinary wolf. This was an alpha. His scent washed over me, of frost-kissed pine, dark earth, and raw, untamed power. It was a scent that should have terrified me, but instead it sparked something deep and dormant within my own wolf. A sense of recognition. He didn't attack. His gaze locked with mine, and the world narrowed to that single, intense connection. The fear didn't vanish, but it quieted, overshadowed by the sheer force of his presence. I heard the cry of the injured man. His voice was a low rumble, not through the air, but in my mind. A mind link. My eyes widened. He was not just an alpha. He was powerful enough to link with an unknown Omega. I was standing guard at the border and came as soon as I heard. A border guard? From which pack? My mind raced, but my desperation was greater than my caution. "I know a healer," I managed to say, my voice shaky. "We can take him there." He gave a single sharp nod. Together, we managed to lift the old man. The alpha took most of the weight, his strength effortless, his movements sure and controlled. I led the way, my body humming with a strange, electric awareness of the powerful being at my side. We moved through the shadows as one, a silent, desperate procession. At the healer's hut, on the very outskirts of the village, the healer, an elderly beta named Arya, took the old man from our arms with a worried glance but no questions. As she began her work, the alpha turned to leave, his form already blending back into the night. "Wait!" The word burst from me, fueled by a sudden, inexplicable dread of him disappearing. He paused, looking back at me, those amber eyes questioning. "Please," I pleaded, my voice soft. "Stay for the night. The woods are dangerous, and you've helped me so much." He hesitated, his gaze sweeping over my humble form, my pleading eyes. Then, a barely perceptible nod. My little house was a single room, filled with the scent of dried herbs and loneliness. I offered him the lone chair by the cold hearth, quickly stirring the embers to life. As the flames began to dance, I found myself speaking, filling the heavy silence with stories of my mother. "She always said kindness was the greatest strength a wolf could have," I whispered, my voice thick with memory. that true power wasn't in dominating others, but in offering a hand to those who've fallen. I told him how she taught me to see the soul, not the station. The Alpha listened, his expression an unreadable mask, but he didn't interrupt. His silent attention felt like a balm on my frayed nerves. The air in the small space shifted, growing warmer, charged with an unspoken understanding. He was a stranger, an Alpha from a rival pack, a danger to my very existence. Yet, in the flickering firelight, he felt like the only safe harbor in a lifetime of storms. And as the night wore on, I felt the first, terrifyingly fragile threads of a connection being woven between us, a bond built not on ceremony, but on a single quiet act of mercy. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, piercing the single window of my hut and illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. He was already standing by the door, a silhouette of formidable power against the waking world. The brief, fragile intimacy of the night was shattered, replaced by the cold, hard light of reality. His eyes, those piercing amber pools, found mine one last time. They were still unreadable, a fortress guarding his thoughts. "Thank you," he said, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that vibrated in the space between us. And then, without another word, he turned and melted into the retreating mist, as if he were a phantom conjured by my loneliness. The emptiness he left behind was a physical ache. I stood there for a long time, the chill of the morning seeping into my bones, my heart a heavy, leaden weight in my chest. The wonder of our meeting warred with a profound sense of loss. Who was he? Why did his absence feel like a missing piece of my own soul? The ceremony was over. My chance was gone. I sank onto the edge of my narrow bed, watching the sun climb higher, its cheerful light a mockery to my despair. I had chosen a stranger over my destiny, and now I was truly alone. The weight of my actions crashed down on me. I had sheltered a wolf from another pack, a forbidden act. If the king or the council found out, the punishment would be severe. Banishment. Or worse. A cold knot of fear tightened in my stomach. Later, I gathered the tattered remains of my courage and ventured out to check on the old man at the healer's hut. Walking through the village was a walk of shame. The pack was stirring, and the mated pairs from the night before walked with a new, intimate closeness that was like salt in a wound. Their eyes, when they fell upon me, were a familiar blend of pity and disdain. "Look, the orphan's back," a voice muttered, not quite quietly enough. "No mate. No surprise. Low-value Omega. What did she expect?" The words were arrows, each one finding its mark. I kept my head down, my cheeks burning, my old gown feeling like a banner announcing my failure. At the healer's hut, Arya gave me a brief, sympathetic nod. "The old man was resting," she said. "He would live." It was the one bright spot in the crushing gloom, but even her pitying gaze felt like a confirmation of my worthlessness. I fled back to the solitude of my hut, the emptiness within me now a yawning chasm. The world outside was bright and new, but I felt shrouded in a permanent darkness. I had lost everything for a moment of kindness, and as I closed my door on the world, I was certain that was the end of my story. A solitary, forgotten Omega, who dared to hope for one night. I was wrong. On the third day, the sun was high overhead when the commotion started. The sound of a powerful, unfamiliar group of marching guards coming to a halt, the sharp, commanding tones of elite guards, the startled whispers of the pack that quickly escalated into a wave of palpable tension. I peeked through my small window, my heart leaping into my throat. A group of sleek black guards with armor emblazoned with a crest I didn't recognize, a stylized mountain peak under a full moon, were gathered in front of my small house. These were not our people. My blood ran cold. He told them. The Alpha I had sheltered had returned to his pack and told his king everything. Had I broken some sacred law? Was this a diplomatic incident? Were they here for retribution? Before my panic could fully consume me, a heavy fist pounded on my door. I opened it to find two of my own pack's palace guards, their faces stern and imposing. "You are to appear at the palace immediately," the taller one demanded, his voice leaving no room for question. Terror was a cold stone in my gut. As I followed them through the village, the stares were no longer just of pitying disdain. They were laced with open curiosity and fear. The whispers were louder, more frantic. "What has she done now?" "The kings are both here. They brought their entire council." "She's finally done it, the foolish girl. She's brought war upon us." Each word was a lash. I kept my eyes fixed on the ground, my worn gown feeling like a convict's uniform. By the time the grand, intimidating spires of the palace loomed before me, my legs were trembling so violently I could barely walk. The massive oak doors swung open, revealing the vast, shadowy hall within. I stepped inside, and my breath froze in my lungs. The air was thick with the combined power of the most dominant wolves I had ever felt. And there, standing at the center of it all, was the alpha from the woods. His eyes met mine, and for a fleeting second, I saw something flicker in their amber depths, something that wasn't anger, but it was gone too quickly to decipher. My knees threatened to buckle. I was a lowly omega, standing in a hall of kings and alphas. I braced myself for the blow, for the condemnation, for the sentence that would end my life as I knew it. This was it. The consequence of my compassion. The throne room was a cavern of judgment, every echo a whisper of my impending doom. The air was so thick with alpha power it was hard to breathe. My own king, a stern, granite-faced man with eyes that had always looked through me, sat on his high throne. And beside him, another king, equally regal, but with an aura of fierce intelligence, and a gaze that felt like it could see into the deepest corners of my soul. The neighboring king, and, on his right, him, the stranger from the woods. His posture was rigid, his gaze intense, but he remained silent, a prince in his father's shadow. My king's voice boomed through the hall, shattering the silence. "Why did you choose to help an injured man instead of attending the mating ceremony?" All eyes were on me. I felt small, insignificant, a mouse surrounded by wolves. But a spark of defiance, born from a lifetime of being overlooked, ignited within me. My voice, though trembling, was clear. "Because no one else would, Your Majesty. He was alone and in pain. I couldn't just walk away." I chanced to glance at the old man, who was now standing near the neighboring king, clean and well cared for, his eyes filled with gratitude. My king's brows furrowed. He leaned forward, his presence pressing down on me. "And why did you shelter a stranger? Do you not know the danger? The laws you broke?" This was the question I had feared. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry as dust. I looked directly at the prince, at the wolf I had felt a connection to in the quiet of my hut. "Kindness," I said, the word stronger now, "sees beyond laws and rules. It sees the person, not the pack. It sees the need, not the danger." A stunned silence descended upon the hall. It was so complete, I could hear the frantic beating of my own heart. I had just challenged the very foundation of our pack's laws in front of both kings. I expected fury, but then, something miraculous happened. The expression of the neighboring king shifted. The stern lines around his mouth softened, and in his eyes, I didn't see anger, but a deep, profound respect. A flicker of pride. He looked from me to his son, and a silent understanding seemed to pass between them. My own king looked stunned, speechless. The elders murmured amongst themselves. I stood there, my body trembling, but for the first time in my entire life, I felt a different kind of power. Not the power of dominance, but the power of unwavering conviction. And I felt truly felt seen. The silence was broken by the sound of confident footsteps. The prince stepped away from his father's side and walked toward me. Every fiber of my being was attuned to his movement. The world narrowed until it was only him, his powerful frame closing the distance between us, his amber eyes holding mine captive. He stopped mere inches away, his scent of frost and pine enveloping me, making my head spin. "My name is Kale," he said, his voice low, meant only for me, yet carrying through the silent hall. "Son of Boran, king of the Silvermane Pack, and I owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid. Kale, a prince." The truth settled over me, not with shock, but with a strange, deep sense of rightness. The mysterious Alpha, the silent guardian, was a royal prince. Then, he did something that stole the air from the room. He reached out and took my hand. His fingers were warm, strong, and as they closed around mine, a jolt of pure white-hot energy shot up my arm, setting every nerve ending ablaze. A gasp escaped my lips, echoed by several in the crowd. It was the mate pull, a force so primal, so undeniable, it shook the very foundations of my being. My wolf howled in recognition and joy within me. I saw the same stunning revelation reflected in his eyes. The shock, the awe, the instant, absolute certainty. The gratitude in his gaze deepened into something more, something possessive and fiercely protective. He didn't let go of my hand. Instead, he turned to his father, his voice ringing with authority. "Father, this is her, the one." He then looked at my king. "With your permission, I would ask that she return with us, to my pack, to my side." My king, still looking utterly bewildered, turned his gaze to me. "Omega, do you wish to go with them?" My heart was a wild, joyful drum. I looked at Kale, at our joined hands, feeling the truth of the bond humming between us like a live wire. This was the destiny the ceremony had failed to give me. This was the belonging I had ached for my entire life. "Yes," I answered, my voice clear and strong, no trace of a tremble left. "Yes, I wish to go." The mate pull had claimed me. Not a ceremony, not a law, but a bond forged in kindness and sealed by fate itself. "When will you be ready to leave?" King Boran asked, his voice gentle. "Tomorrow," I said without a moment's hesitation. The thought of spending another night in this place, under these scornful gazes, was unbearable. "I can't wait to live outside this pack, to live a life I've never known." King Boran nodded, a genuine smile touching his lips. "Then prepare your things. We will be here by sunrise tomorrow to take you with us." In Kale's grasp, surrounded by kings, I felt the heavy chains of my old life fall away. I was no longer the orphaned Omega. I was chosen. I was claimed. I was his. The news didn't just spread. It exploded through the pack like a supernatural shockwave. I felt the shift in the air as I walked back to my hut to gather my meager belongings. The stares were no longer just of scorn, but of sheer, unadulterated shock. The whispers were now laced with a new potent emotion. Envy. The Silvermane Prince claimed her? How? She's nothing. An orphan. She's to be his mate? The future Luna? Their words, which had once cut so deep, now slid off me like water off a wolf's pelt. Their disbelief was a testament to the miraculous turn my life had taken. For the first time, I held my head high, my spine straight. I was not invisible. I was the center of a story they could never have imagined. That night, in my small hut for the last time, sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the ghost of Kale's touch, saw the possessive warmth in his gaze, and heard the certainty in his voice when he called me his. The humble room, once a cage of my loneliness, now felt like the launching point of my greatest adventure. I was leaving a life of cruelty and neglect for a future shimmering with promise. The wait for sunrise was an agony of delicious anticipation. When the first light of dawn tinged the horizon, they came. Not a covert convoy, but a royal procession. Kyle at the forefront, mounted on a powerful midnight black horse, his presence more regal than the rising sun. His personal guards, stern and loyal, formed a protective circle around him. I stood before my hut, my small bag in hand, my heart pounding a rhythm of pure joy. Kyle dismounted in one fluid motion and came to me. He didn't speak. He simply took my bag, his fingers brushing against mine, sending another spark of that wonderful energy through me. Then he helped me onto his horse, settling me in front of him before swinging up behind. His arms caged me in, his chest a solid, warm wall against my back. It was the safest I had ever felt. As we rode away, I didn't look back. The journey was a blur. And then we were there. The Silvermane territory was breathtaking. Towering pines, majestic mountains, and a central pack compound that buzzed with life and energy, so different from the stagnant air of my old home. Kale didn't lead me to a private chamber. He led me straight to the great clearing in the center of the pack, where what seemed like the entire population had gathered, their curiosity a tangible force in the air. With his hand firmly in mine, he faced his people, his voice projecting with a natural, commanding alpha power that silenced every whisper. "Packmates," he called out, "I present to you the woman who saved a life out of pure compassion, who sheltered a stranger with no thought for herself, the one whose courage and kindness have shown me the true heart of a Luna." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the crowd before looking down at me, his eyes blazing with pride and possession. "This is my mate, your future Luna." The silence held for a breath, two. Then, a single wolf howled from the back, a sound of acceptance and joy. Another joined, and then another, until the very air vibrated with a symphony of welcoming howls. It was a sound more beautiful than any music I had ever heard. I was no longer the forgotten Omega. I was proclaimed. I was chosen. I was home. And as I stood there, hand in hand with my prince, surrounded by the music of my new pack, I knew our story was only just beginning. The challenges of being a Luna from nowhere, the shadows of my past, the politics of a new court, they were all waiting. But with Kale's hand in mine, I was ready to face them all.